Okay, now it's all yours, Denver.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We will go ahead and attempt a roll call. If we don't have quorum, I would suggest we move forward just in the spirit of what this committee was supposed to do, being able to bring minds to the table, have open discussions, and be able to make plans and move forward. Whether or not we have a quorum, I don't believe there are any decisions we're going to be voting on today, none that at least I see on the agenda. So I would suggest that we move forward and attempt a roll call vote. Or a call of the roll, please.
So normally at this point in time, Nathan, this is where Bobby would go through the roll call here off of our membership. So take it away.
All right, so I have Denver Henderson.
Here.
Shibu Aarons. Travis Hoffman.
Here.
Looks like Katjana's position is vacant.
Yes.
Todd Mowbray.
He said he would not be available today.
Are there any alternate members in their place?
So is Sue on? Nope, no Sue. Okay.
Mike Hopkins. Any alternate for Mike?
Okay, we did not have a designated alternate. And then our at-large alternate, Larry, recently resigned his position. Members of the EAC received his resignation. I wanted to say how much I appreciated that email. It is a great example of everybody working together collaboratively towards the same goal, regardless of politics.
Absolutely echo that.
So then we did have 2 call-in numbers. Could you please identify yourself for the minutes?
Liz Alders, Mont Perk.
Okay.
And I am 7215643. That's Paul Filicetti.
Perfect, Paul. Thanks. Sorry. Great.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we don't have quorum, so we're not going to be able to actually take any votes or make any formal motions. But I would suggest that we continue to move ahead. What we will do is we'll move the approval of the minutes to our next meeting. And Bradley, I would suggest that we open up to any public comment that we have from members of the public that may be joining us.
So, hey, Denver, this is Josh. I just wanted to make sure that people who were on here knew that Ann and Chris and I were here as well, just so if they would know who we are, or saw just if they were just looking at our initials on the bottom. So we're here.
Very good. That makes complete sense, Josh. Thank you. Would you like to tell folks what your position is, and Ann, would you like to tell people what your position is and what your role is?
I'm one of the 3 county commissioners.
And it looks like you just had another person join. Karen?
Karen Wickersham.
Yeah, hi.
Wonderful. Welcome, Karen. How are you?
Good. Hey, I have to let you guys know of something. My husband's going through some heart stuff. He's having heart surgery on Monday. And I don't know if I'm formally part of this team or not. And I noticed you said something about a quorum, Denver. I'm waiting for a call because Jack's going through some stuff, and I had to call the doctor just a few minutes ago. And we're waiting for a call from the doctor. I'm going to have to go once we get that call, but I am calling in because right now we're just in kind of wait mode. So
well, Karen, I appreciate you calling in. You're always welcome as a member of the public. What I would like to do at this point is take comment from members of the public that would like to weigh in on either something that is on our agenda or something that is not on our agenda. So Karen, if you have some comment that you would like to make, please go right ahead.
No, I really don't at this time. Usually I have a lot. I would have comments, but I have been so focused on so many other things right now, I don't. But thank you for that. And thank you for the invite. And with that, I think I will leave the meeting if that's okay.
All right. Well, best of luck for you and your family, and thank you for joining us, Karen.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Is there any other members of the public that would like to provide comments?
Hi, this is Liz Albers from Montpurg, and I had some comments regarding the primary election that happened here in June. And I see that isn't on the agenda. I'm happy to provide my comments now, or I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. I'm just looking through the PowerPoint presentation that Bradley provided me with. So yeah, this is also my first meeting, so I'm not entirely sure the general structure. I've kind of been treating it like a city council meeting, waiting for you all to let me know when I can talk or comment, but I just wanted to let you know that I do have some statistics and comments about the primary election specifically here in Missoula that I would love to share with you all. And if you want me to do that now, I'm more than happy to.
I think now would be a perfectly fine and appropriate time to do that, Liz.
Great, thank you. So like I said, my name is Liz Albers. I am the executive director of Montpurg. I'm sure some of you on this committee are familiar with Montpurg, but for those who aren't, Montpurg is we've been around for 40 years here on the University of Montana campus. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit, and we work to empower, educate, and train the next generation of civic leaders. So our work includes educational efforts to protect our environment, protect consumers, and of course, get people registered to vote and engaged in the voting process. Montpurg works in collaboration with groups like Forward Montana, Western Native Voice, and Montana Women Vote through the Montana Voices table, who, using the voter file, pulled together some of the data that I'd like to share with you today regarding the June primary. So, protecting public health and access to the ballot during a global pandemic is incredibly challenging. And but we feel that there were some obvious positive outcomes from the 2020 primary, including record turnout and paid postage, and all while remaining safe. I'm thinking about the comment that I saw in the Missoula Current about someone who went to the county elections office on election day and said they'd never smelled so much Lysol in their life. So I commend this office and the Elections Advisory Committee and Bradley on a successful June 2020 primary. So as I said, it was record turnout. As a whole, high voter turnout demonstrates ongoing support for voting by mail and additionally paid postage. Both clerks and recorders, and voters expressed support for paid postage. That said, there are some areas for concern that I'd like to identify. Two being voter confusion and youth voter turnout. So just to talk a little bit about turnout, in 2020, Montana saw the highest presidential primary voter turnout since 1972. Which was the first primary where 18 to 20-year-olds were allowed to vote. Turnout was 10 percentage points higher than in 2016. As we know, receiving a ballot by mail has long been associated with voter turnout. In 2016, for instance, 82% of primary voters who received an absentee ballot ended up voting. However, all mail voting leaves some Montanans behind, and it's not convenient for everyone. So specifically people in Indian country where at-home mail ballot delivery is uncommon and post offices may be far away. All mail voting may create an additional barrier to ballot box access. Also young people, like I said, we're here on the University of Montana campus. For young people who are likely to move more often, mail voting may also create an additional hurdle as their ballots might not reach them. So that said, youth voter turnout was higher in 2020 than it was in 2016. However, young people saw a smaller gain in turnout compared to older Montanans. The increase in turnout for voters between the ages of 55 and 64 was nearly double that of voters between the ages of 18 and 24. So obviously this could be influenced by COVID-19 and many young people and students moving unexpectedly due to school closures, economic instability, and other factors. One point I definitely want to highlight here and touch on is undeliverable ballots. So statewide, there were more than 33,000 undeliverable ballots, which represents about 5.5% of ballots mailed out. And this is the point I want to highlight, underline, put in bold, is in Missoula, 73% of ballots mailed to the precinct House District 89, which is home to the University of Montana dorms, were returned as undeliverable. I'm just going to state that again. 73% of the ballots mailed to House District 89, where the University of Montana is, were returned as undeliverable. So just for comparison, 48% of the ballots mailed to House District 63 in Bozeman, which houses the Montana State University dorms, were returned. So Montperg moving forward is thinking a lot about those 73% of ballots that were marked as undeliverable here in the University District. Just some solutions we're thinking about is some type of presence on campus, specifically an election administrator providing in-person voting on campus. We're also, civic engagement groups like Montperg are going to be working to engage with voters whose ballots were marked undeliverable, leading up to the general election to make sure that they are registered to vote. And we also would advise the Elections Advisory Committee to encourage the University of Montana leadership to communicate with students about voting in the November election, especially about updating their addresses. So the next issue I just wanted to touch on was voter confusion. Transitioning to an all-mail-in ballot is no small feat, and we obviously greatly appreciate the efforts of election administrators. We feel that Bradley did a great job providing accurate instructions and updates, but some other sources, for instance, the Secretary of State's website, conflicted with information. So the one example I can provide is that per the sheet distributed to Missoula voters with their ballots, the designated drop-off location was the fairgrounds. But both the SOS website and the clerk's spreadsheet, the Clerk and Reporters Association spreadsheet, directed voters to the elections office on Russell Street. But Bradley reacted quickly and created a drive-through on Russell Street, which was appreciated. So our solution, we can't control what the SOS does, but, we're happy to partner with the Elections Advisory Committee and Bradley to distribute accurate information to voters. The other example we can provide is that the information sheet distributed with ballots indicated that the elections office would be open until about 5 p.m. on June 1st, the day before the primary. And while, advocates such as ourselves know that the elections office are closed that afternoon before the election day, we did have some people saying they were frustrated by locked doors on that June 1st date. So we just want to make sure that posted information reflects any closures. So that is just some of the issues that we've identified. But again, overall, there's some great positives that came out of the June 2020 primary, and we look forward to working with the Elections Advisory Committee and Bradley on work going into November. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liz, so much. I'm sorry, Josh, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to ask, there's a question if you're down with that. So, Liz,
I'm down with that.
Thanks. Gina, what do you think the difference was if you compare Bozeman to Missoula? Were they doing something we weren't doing, or were we doing something that they were doing? Like, what's the difference between the two?
That's a fantastic question, and I, would have to engage a little bit more with the Montana State University campus to know specifically. I don't, quite frankly. It was, and to be fair, there's still, it was 30, half of the ballots there were returned as undeliverable. So, there's obviously work to be done there, but I would have to reach out to our Bozeman contacts to get the feedback in that regard.
Yeah.
And Josh and Denver, just to tag it in there, Casey and I are actually working really hard on these numbers. I loved it because, Liz, my number for undeliverables is actually a little bit higher than yours, and I understand the difference in there. We exclude our voided ballots, and since nobody received mail at the university, that is one of the big issues. Casey and I are working right now at the governor's office to compare and collaborate and hit every single point that you had talked about. We're working with the leadership at the university. We're trying to have in-person satellite offices available. And then, there is an issue where the primary is just a lot different than November because of the schedule for finals and the schedule for moving out of the dorms, and in particular, COVID-19. But we did have very high undeliverable rates, specifically around the university, and we've compared those numbers back. In Gallatin County, it was actually lower. than the average over the last 3 primary elections. In Missoula, it was lower than 2018. And for some reason in 2016, there were only 197 total ballots issued to the university. And our numbers were very low for our undeliverables there, but we saw 82, 46%. We have high undeliverable rates at the university. And we had caution about doing in-person events at the university in the middle of an unknown pandemic. But I love hearing this feedback, and I love seeing where third-party groups, our office, and other elections offices are all working on the exact same issues right now. So that's good.
Yeah, I can just speak anecdotally. I know I was talking with a student who was actually going over to the elections office on election day to vote, and, sussing out why she was waiting till then to do so. She said, well, the university said that my mail was going to get forwarded to me, and I thought that would include my ballot. So I think even just, reversing that, thinking about the students coming back onto campus who, maybe did update their register to their parents or whatever address they ended up moving to, just letting them know that, hey, they can't forward your ballot. There's a statute that says, ballots are unforwardable. So that's just another point I wanted to raise.
Very good. Any other questions for Liz about the comment that she has provided?
Liz, or Bradley too, is there a ballot drop-off box on campus? And what would it take to create one? Do we have to have a person staffing it given the new law?
It would depend. Currently, there's an injunction on BIPA. So BIPA is not necessarily set. However, there is a law on the books, and this is part of the recommendation from the association to the governor, that if it's an all-male election, it must be a manned ballot drop box staffed by 2 election judges. Now, what we have done in the past on other elections is held a satellite office about a week or 2 before the election. In particular, for the primary, it's very successful because students are still there, and we can catch them before they leave. And we can catch anybody from any different district at the university. We are definitely planning, and we're working closely with ASUM, as well as helping encourage Gallatin County with their new equipment to provide similar services there. So I think that that's going to be one of the biggest areas, is because when we have a satellite office, we have a manned drop box. We can look towards extended hours, and I'll talk about that later in our presentation. But I think that there are a lot of good opportunities that we can do to increase ballot turnout, and we'll see naturally a higher number from the university, and through some outreach and efforts, we'll increase that number through the work of our office.
Fantastic.
Rather, I just had one thought here. Given that there's staff at the university all the time, I wonder if there's a way to work in partnership with them, for lack of a better word, kind of deputize some university employees who are already in a place where students are coming, have them become the official types of people who can staff a ballot box, so you don't have to create 2 new people. Maybe it's in a foyer with some plexiglass, something just to make it easier on you and a place where students are already going.
Yeah, great idea.
Wonderful. This is really good discussion, Liz. I want to thank you for joining our meeting and providing the insight that you have from your organization. I hope you'll continue to be a part of these conversations going forward. Is there any other comment from the public? If not, I would suggest that we move directly into the election administrator report.
This is Travis. Obviously not a member of the public, but just to add to the comments that were just made in regards to mail ballots not being as accessible or easy for some populations of people. And I would just add to that, people with disabilities who require an electronic means of voting, especially when there's only one drop place per election where an individual is able to utilize accessible voting technology. It really puts a barrier in place for those individuals as well.
Perfect.
Travis, can I ask, do you have any recommended solutions or suggestions for improvements?
Just as we talked about in the past, I mean, having more than one man drop place, obviously, for somebody who lives in Sealy or Condon or somewhere else further away from Missoula, getting to the Missoula elections office to utilize that machine isn't always possible or easy.
Okay, great. I'll also say I've heard from other voter advocates that a suggestion that additional signage addressing not only the hours of operation, but why people could not drop off ballots at certain times might also be helpful in avoiding confusion in the future. I know it seems like we always offer more signage as a solution for improvement, but that is what I have heard from some folks.
Yep, absolutely.
Great. Well, why don't we go ahead and move into the election administrator report, and I'm sure that we'll have more discussion as we get into it.
Great. Well, the first area that I really wanted to talk about was building updates. And so, Paul, thank you for joining us here. I know we had kind of talked, we wanted to discuss where we are in the phase, the budget of the process, kind of permitting, and what work is going to be completed for November for the election center here.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Bradley.
Great.
Just as a reminder, my name is Paul Filicetti. I'm an architect with A&E Architects working on the building plans. The plans have been submitted into the city for permitting, and we're receiving feedback from them. There's actually two processes of permitting. One's a DER, which is Design Excellence Review permitting process, and the other is a Building Construction Zoning Engineering Process Review. We submitted them as if they would be worked through simultaneously, and for the most part, that's worked out fairly well. We have received back and resubmitted the DER permit set, that is the design review requirement permit set, which is a series of variance requirements. So that's gone back to them for review, and as of this morning. So they have that, and that's in the process. I've been receiving interim comments from the city regarding various issues that they see on the plan. So we've been going through, and I've been working through with my consultants, the rest of the project team, to revise those drawings in preparation for resubmittal to the city for permitting. The process has been long, as it is typically. I think it's not anything out of the ordinary. I expect that with the DER submittal this morning, we'll be pushed out a list of final review comments from the city later this week that we'll address and resubmit back to the city a revised set of plans based on those comments in hopes of getting a permit. With that in mind, and kind of anticipating when that might happen, it could be like, we're already in kind of mid-July, so it could be another month before we see a permit pushed out from the city, which would allow the contractor to formally proceed with construction activity on the building. That said, the contractor has the ability to reach out to the city and permit specific scopes of the work on the building, which include the re-roof project, which is going on right now, and some of the utility infrastructure upgrades that would be tied into the city services that would come into the building. So they're looking at those to see what they can do to get that work started. In terms of where the project could be in by the November elections, that's a little bit up in the air right now. We just got off a meeting with the contractor this afternoon and discussed permitting or discussed submittals. That is the information that we've called out on the drawings that they would be providing us in documented form that would go through a review process by the project team and eventually the ownership group to say, yes, that is correct, and allows the contractor to proceed with the work. They're starting that process in advance of a permit in hopes that they can get some of this legwork done to expedite the essential work that needs to be done in order to get to November. Again, that said, I can't say specifically where we'll be in November. without knowing how the permit process is going to land just yet. Technically, ICE is in the building, I believe, until the 30th of September, so that puts us kind of in a bind as well. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Hey, Paul, it's Chris Onsbury. Just for information, when we talk about ICE in this case, could you say who that is for folks on the phone who might not know that we're not using an acronym, that this is actual blocks of ice?
Yes, thank you, Chris. That is VW ICE. Yes, thank you. VW ICE is an occupant in the building. They're using the freezer in the building currently.
Some of the big areas we're going to see, this is not going to be those final plans that we were discussing in January. This is going to be a workable step between where we were for June and where we want to be towards the future overall process. The big areas that I've really focused on are heat, light, power, some of these aspects, because Denver, as you know, we had no air conditioning, heating, or any HVAC services for the June election. They're going through and they're working hard on insulating that portion of the building. We may have temporary heat. They're doing a lot of good work to try and get it up to speed. We are not planning on having this be completed by November. Permitting takes time. This is one of these areas where we're all kind of at the mercy of the process. And we will have a very good in-between step between where we were for June and where we're going to be for 2022.
Okay, so we're looking a couple years out as far as being able to make substantive improvements to the facility along the lines of the recommendations that our committee put forward the last, I think it was probably back in January or February, that we had kind of a full presentation, and the committee was able to offer some substantive feedback. It sounds like those kind of improvements are not going to be ready by November. That will be something that we will look to make improvements leading up to 2022.
Well, and they're in process right now. The big issue is that we did not want to have concrete construction ongoing as we came into late registration. So there has been a big area from me as a request not to have a lot of work started that could impede us towards election day. So we may not have our in-floor wiring set up. We may be on Ethernet and Wi-Fi. We may not have the connection for HVAC through between the ICE building. We'll have temporary heating. A lot of those improvements that we had discussed have been presented to the team, and we're going to be working on those throughout this next fiscal year, but not necessarily ready for November. So it's not that they're going to take till 2022. It is that if it wasn't a project that could be completed by November, please don't proceed with it. Areas like parking lot.
If I could just jump into Denver, that the participation of the EAC was great, and what it did is allow us to make sure that we're not making any decisions in this phase or taking any steps in this early phase that might be contrary or contradict that substantive input in future phases of the project. We don't want to go this direction and then have to end up going a different direction. So it's and Paul, you might want to add to that. I don't know.
No, I think that's good. As you know, the entire set of documents that went into the city is a complete building package. Everything that the EAC, the comments that we had reviewed back in earlier this year, late last year and earlier this year, those were all integrated into the project. There was a value engineering step that happened. That is, the budget on the project came in higher than anticipated, beyond what the county was willing to spend on the project. And so we did a value engineering process, which resulted in a phased look at the whole overall building. So the building will be split up into phased construction to meet the county's budget needs. which may mean, some of it doesn't happen within the next 12 months. It could be the next 14 months or 16 months, depending on with the availability of funding.
This is Travis. Just a comment on some of the stuff that's already happened, and I know Bradley, you and I met in regards to where some of the parking spaces, specifically accessible parking spaces, should be. And the one that's there kind of just blobbed down in the middle of no man's land there in front of the warehouse. I don't believe that that's adequate. There's no access aisle. There's just a blue rectangle painted on a bunch of gravel. It's not slip resistant. Nothing prevents anybody from parking on either side of that, and that would just block access. So.
Yeah, we can look about what we do to take out that area for November.
You know what I think might be helpful is if there were kind of a preliminary timeline for when improvements are scheduled or planned to be made, starting at the present day, going up to kind of the projected end of construction. I don't know if that's something that you can put together at this point, but I think it would be really helpful to give us all a sense of when these kind of improvements are supposed to be incorporated and completed. Paul, is there any document like that that's already been created, or is that something that you can create?
I'll defer to the county here too, because I know you guys have information here too. But the construction documents, that is the information that we put together that we submitted to the city, is for the entire building and the entire site. So it includes all site improvements in a comprehensive way, and then the building as well. So everything that we discussed in the building. But for budgeting reasons, that was divided into different phases. And specifically the north portion of the building, the portion that is not currently occupied by ice and the freezer, is the first phase of the development of the project, knowing that the site and the site work improvements would be in part of that scope of work. So we're working with the city right now to get through a review process on the site work and conditions that would allow us to move forward on that, the improvements there. As Bradley stated, chances are that will not be available by November, just because of that review process and all the people who have to look at it and the things that go on behind the scenes. All has to take place, and it just takes time to make that happen. But hopefully we get a building construction permit pushed out within the next 4 to 6 weeks, and that process can move forward. In terms of a written schedule, it might be a little bit more of a challenge at this point.
Yeah, it is a challenge, but so we're kind of juggling pieces and moving larger undertakings into. So for example, we had looked at doing the parking lot in this and what's being referred to as phase 2, which is what we're in now, because prior to June was phase 1, if I'm not mistaken. So we've moved and Travis, thank you. First of all, hi Travis. But thank you for the comment on the parking between now and November. Mitigating things like that and doing things like that prior to November are great, and that's exactly what we should be focusing on. But larger site work and looking at that parking lot, we were going to include it in this phase 2, but that part of that value engineering was weighing those values, right? The cost with what can we provide for parking, ensuring we're providing accessibility above and beyond whenever we can. So looking at that actually moved it into phase 3, which then impacts how the financing of the project works also. So it's looking at the financing in phases, and it's looking at the construction in phases. So we'd love to have it all mapped out between now and the end, but we're kind of inching our way forward a little bit as, staying ahead of ourselves as much as we can, with an eye on the, these really, if we didn't have an election coming up, it would be a whole other story. So it's trying to provide that, that also that added that value of providing the services to the public on the days that we really need to be able to provide those services. Having said that, Denver, I've asked for that also. So when we get it, we'll share it.
I really appreciate that. And I think
Yeah.
for lay members of the public, like myself, that don't have a background in permitting or construction, I think it would be really helpful to know just a basic preliminary timeline of when we anticipate these phases to be started and completed.
Yeah.
And I can also appreciate that, it may be too early to be able to put forward a vision like that. But at some point, I would hope that we could put forward a kind of planning document that clearly provides kind of a chronological timeline for when construction would take place. I'm sorry, Josh, I think you were going to say something. I cut you off.
I was interrupting you. Sorry. This is kind of for our architect. Would you feel confident enough in putting together that timeline that we could make it public and kind of let the public know this is where we're at? Because I think there's some expectation, we bought this building, now what's happening? That especially if people are going to be going there to drop ballots off, we could have a big sign saying, spring, expect this, summer, expect this.
Sure. And again, once we have the permit in hand for the building, yes. I think it'd be easy enough to run with a construction schedule and be able to provide that. Without that, it would be pretty speculative. I can still provide it. It just wouldn't be as accurate as it would be once we get the permit.
Sure.
And I think we can direct the focus on like the large areas, the big picture areas. When you ask Jackson for a schedule and a timeline, that means a very different, much more specific, detailed thing to them than it does to people like us, because I'm with you, Denver. Like, I'm not, this isn't my wheelhouse totally, but I think, focusing on these specific areas by phase is really what you're talking about. And we should be able to do that for you.
Yeah, and it'd be good to promote, to say you can expect to see this parking lot paved in the spring of 2021, here's what you saw done for this election. Here's what you saw done for the previous. Here's our future plans and where they fit in very broad strokes.
Yes.
I think it's going to go a long way with the public who may be thinking, you bought this piece of junk and just left it like this. So it's an important thing. Important to me that we let people know that we're on it.
Absolutely.
I think we're all on the same page here. It was a substantial investment. It was the right investment to make. It was the right location. But we owe to county taxpayers to be able to show improvement or to be able to show the plan for improvement. So I'm glad that we're all on the same page. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. Unless you want some great election info, you could definitely hop off at this point in time. But here what I've got is a...
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
We'll talk to you later. All right, bye.
All righty. I sent this out to everybody too, because sometimes it can be a little bit hard for me to follow through my presentations online and on the call. We're also recording this so we can post this to the website later, just to kind of be some public information, and we'll have these PowerPoints out as well. So really quickly, here's an overview of the things we want to discuss. Nathan Coyen was hired, and I want to do a quick introduction from him. We have passed some bylaw changes, which include some new members, some current vacancies, as well as some additional recruitment that we're going to start on very shortly. I want to talk about our prepaid postage budget request, go through the primary election, talk about some of the statistics, and really dive into our internal discussion of what went well and what could be improved upon. I love that we hit a lot of the areas that we already discussed in here. I'm going to run you through everything we're doing this summer, so I'll skip reading all that information off to you. I want to talk a little bit about our Help America Vote Act funding, University of Montana survey information, National Voter Registration Day, and our upcoming elections for the fall. We'll have two, a Lolo school bond and the general election. Nathan Coyne got hired in as our Deputy Elections Administrator. He has served with elections and done so many tasks. We were discussing it today. Nathan has been such a great hire for the elections department. I'm excited to have him on board and help him keep everything running so smoothly. I'm going to run through these things. Don't hesitate to interrupt me, catch me. I'm just trying to be very mindful of everybody's time. Bylaw changes. There was a resolution passed that requested that the BCC add 2 additional at-large members. When Nathan was hired, we had a meet and greet with the Board of County Commissioners, and they requested that we add in an additional requirements for engagement, to have members train and gain specific knowledge in an area with the elections department. Now, we drafted these changes, met with the commissioners on the 9th to adopt the changes, and they signed off on the changes. Josh, mea culpa, my apologies. I sent this through, and we'll be revisiting these changes just a little bit. Unfortunately, I had missed this in my review, and what we had done is we had pulled the wrong bylaws. As you'll notice on the right-hand side here, there is no Libertarian Party member, and there is no student member. We've already adjusted these bylaws, but when we were presenting these, there was a question that came up about the Libertarian Party member. And I just wanted to bring this forward because we have now our corrected bylaws ready to be added to a public meeting agenda to match the intent of the resolution and the intent of the commissioners. We can either have a Libertarian Party member and a Libertarian Party alternate, or this might be a very good opportunity to remove the Libertarian Party member. Since 2018, when this was added, we have had no communication with the Central Committee. We've not been able to get a contact in 2020 since I started, and we have had a vacant seat designated for the Libertarian Party member, and their Central Committee is simply not active.
I would also add to that, Bradley, I looked for their Facebook group, and the last post they had was in 2018. So I think it is safe to assume that they are no longer active.
Now, very clearly, I love the work that you guys do. As an ad hoc committee, I think that it is great that you guys take on such above and beyond to pass resolutions to support this. Very simply, I can present these to the commission with the Libertarian Party member or without the Libertarian Party member. Josh, I really wanted to get your input at this point in time. As this committee serves to help serve the BCC and elections, what do you think?
So given that the Libertarian Party has not been active generally, I feel it's okay to move on. And if we hear from them, hey, we're here, what the heck, you forgot us? Well, we will say, geez, you guys were inactive. Sorry, we missed you. We will now include you.
And there is still the opportunity for an at-large position.
Of course, of course.
You know, if they don't have a central committee, they want to be a part because they are qualified, please. I think that that would be a good voice to add. And the next time there is an opening, please apply. So for me, I'll be putting through another request for commissioner action to update these bylaws, and we will update them so that it includes the student member. The difference is we pulled a January 2018 and there had been the update to include the student member in April. So we want to correct those, and I'll present out in an email all of the changes. We have already re-reviewed these, made sure that they're correct and updated. My apologies. I hate to come back to you with the exact same issue. Moving forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the changes to this because it did state that we added in an eligibility requirement. And the eligibility requirement specifically stated that you must be a registered voter and that you must take election judge training. We will have multiple opportunities for election judge training. I think we had 80 different class opportunities, so we can find one where everybody is available. The whole portion for this is that we want the election advisory committee to be very knowledgeable in the areas that we do. In addition to training, as a requirement, we had requested that members of the election advisory committee take a potential area of specialization. Denver, A great example of this is serving in late registration. You know our process is inside and out. Every post-election audit, Todd Mulberry comes in and helps us assist with this process. So we already have this built in. We just really wanted to work to make sure that we had multiple areas out there, and that through here we can assign these areas to members. You can opt in. We can revisit these yearly, and we can say when we are coming to elect new members to be chair, vice chair, we can also say, would you like to change your area of specialization to cross-train and have more information? This way, if the EAC is working on a resolution or another issue, you can contact the members with this knowledge first, and we can gain this knowledge base to help be better advocates of elections. So as we get this going forward, I feel the best way to work on this is really going to be presenting out these areas of specialization, and we can say through email, where do we want to help hit this? Equipment and testing, Travis, I see this as being an excellent area because we'll be getting new ADA equipment in, and I'd love to work with you to help us know that we're doing the best job we can to train our judges to help serve voters in the best possible way. These are not big issues. These are cover the whole year, because I know that many of our EAC members are also engaged in other activities, and it may not be an opportunity for them to help out at different times of the year, and especially around the election. Petition processing is a process we just wrapped up. Testing takes place at multiple times. Candidate filing is a January area, so this can be a great way to help gain this knowledge base and make the EAC more effective in general. As we pass our bylaws again, I will come forward and we're going to work with Sarah Bell on some outreach for this. We currently have the at-large position as vacant. I have the alternate position for the Republican Party as vacant. I have also in the student position as a vacant position. We added in 2 new at-large members. So we wanted to do a robust outreach, and I wanted to work directly with the Election Advisory Committee to help support and seek out candidates to apply for this committee. I would like to have a very robust applicant pool, and we will be working with Sarah Bell. I had her push pause as we noticed that there was an amendment needed to the bylaws again, but we will be able to recruit and do outreach for all of these different positions. We'll post it, we'll make sure that this information gets out to the EAC, and I'll make sure that we do an individual call Denver, and maybe you could do a call to the other members to help really say, who do you know who might be able to serve in this area? So that way we can cover it from our outreach and directly. As many of the boards that I have worked on, the best outreach comes from current members.
Yeah. Can I just say something very quickly? I think it is incredibly important. You know, over the last year, we really struggled with diversity on our committee, and I think we would make a hard argument that the committee now reflects the diversity of our community. Frankly, I think that we need more women on our committee, and I think that we need more people of color, specifically people who are connected to the Indian and Native American communities. I'd really like to see more diverse perspectives in the composition of our committee. And I fully realize that is the decision and the purview of the county commission. But as the chair, I would ask that you keep that in mind when we have those opportunities to fill positions.
So,
Absolutely.
I think in order to make that happen, we're going to have to actively pursue that goal and not just post, oh, we have an opening, and we're going to have to really do some active reaching out. I think there's a corollary here with all the equity work we have to do at the county and in local government generally. We can't just do things the way we've been doing them with a more open heart. We actually have to do things in a new way, or we're going to get the same result. And I don't claim to know what that new way is. We're just going to have to figure it out. And maybe that means interacting with people specifically who are influential members of the communities where you'd like to see represented and seeking their input.
Yep. And I think that that's exactly it, Josh. That was what I was going to say, is that really revolves around our outreach. I know that we have a very specific area, and I can share these out towards groups like Western Native Voices that are active in elections that represent Native communities to help say, we have this, we would really like to get this. And I think that the more recruitment we do to have it reflect the community in the best possible way, then when it comes to your decision, you have that opportunity to make a selection with more variety, more reflection of the community.
Bradley, is there a group called something like Montana Indian Vote or Indigenous Vote or something like that?
There's Western Native Voices, and then there is another group that is slipping my mind right now.
I only know because it sounds so lame, but I got their T-shirt at the Pearl Jam show. That's yeah, I'm really.
But no, there is, and those are the groups that we should be reaching out to.
That's a great shirt.
Oh, excuse me, guys. Montana Native Vote.
There you go. I have their shirts. Yeah. So we should reach out to them.
As he just pulled that up for us. So yes, those are the groups that we can help reach out to in our county advertising, and then specifically for the EAC, personal requests and outreach to people who you think would bring a good viewpoint to this committee. As many varieties, viewpoints, Larry brought up a very good aspect. When he left, he said that he was the only person on the committee that lived outside of the city limits.
I live outside of the city limits.
That's a good point. I did not know that. Yeah. So, but looking for somebody who represents these rural communities as well, because that is another aspect that we always try and do outreach for. The feedback that I get is it feels like Greeno is an afterthought. It feels like Sealy is an afterthought.
Bradley, we could reach out to Sarah right now as she's in transition in job. So, and ask her to get the word out to all the people on our community councils, because she's got all of them on one list. And that would be a great candidate pool. And they're all outside of Missoula city limits.
Exactly. I'm thinking of Sealy Lake Community Council. They may have somebody good that they could bring forward, but all of these community councils, let's not limit it.
She has them all on one list, and they're all outside of city limits. So.
Yep. So that's the sort of area where from the county we can provide this outreach. And when we start this, I'll make sure that we have a really clear area. This is when our 1 month outreach and recruitment process will start. I'm going to push for that to be by the end of next week, depending on when we can get these bylaws put forward and work with Sarah to establish the terms. And then when we post this, I'm going to work actively with everybody involved with the EAC, as well as much outreach as we can, because what I want to see is that we have 4 positions and 20 applicants. I would like us to review applicants and select from a broad base, not what we see a lot with advisory committees is we have 4 positions and 4 applicants.
I might add 2 here. Josh, you have an all community council meeting this month, I think in the next week or 2. Since that meeting is one that seems to be continuing on a monthly basis, I think highlighting board vacancies.
Good idea.
As a standard agenda item would be a cool thing to add.
That is a really good idea. Would you mind passing that on to Sarah? Because if I say I'll do it, I will forget, or I'll write it down and I won't do it.
I will take care of that.
That is a great idea. Thanks.
Good. Okay, election recap. This is where I want to talk a bit about some statistics and what went well in some other areas. Josh, you missed out on our canvas. This is the information from our canvas. So you didn't draw the short straw, you get it now. We had 84,000 registered voters with a turnout of 54.46%. As Liz said, we're 12 percentage points over our 2016 election. I love pointing that out because 2016 election was a contested presidential election. This was not our election that we had this year, where it was not a contested presidential election. Other differences do include things like the local option gas tax. Anytime there's something that hits somebody's wallet on the ballot, turnout will increase as well. We had a 62.8% ballot return rate. This is a different statistic. I loved it because I did compare this to our 2016. We have an incredibly high absentee ballot return rate among absentee voters. Since this was an all-male election, instead of that 70 to 80% return rate, we were a little bit lower. That could be due to the fact that it's a primary, but 62.8% ballot return rate is not bad. We had 855 ballots which were rejected. These were rejected, and a voter would not have been able to be notified of this because it would have been when we were opening their ballot. They had voted multiple ballots, they'd returned a blank secrecy envelope, or a previous elections ballot instead of the primary elections ballot. We had quite a few school district ballots come in. We always see that. Now, a big note here is that we did reject 231 ballots due to signature issues. This would be that there was a different person who signed that, the signature did not match what was on file, or the signature was missing entirely. We had 5,220 undeliverable ballots. We were almost 1/6 of the state's undeliverable ballots. I had that as a rate of undeliverable ballots specifically at the university of 75.9%. But as we compare this over, in 2018, we had 2,780 ballots. So we are seeing about half. I really think that this is due to two different reasons. University students who had left the university, everybody who's registered at the university center lives on campus. Everybody was asked to leave campus, and as they were packing up due to the pandemic and COVID-19, they did not fill out a voter registration card on their way out to update their addresses. We worked with Forward Montana as well as Montpurg to provide over lists of voters to contact all of the voters who were on campus to help inform them that ballots were not forwardable. But we did see a higher undeliverable rate. The other reason we saw a higher undeliverable rate is we have polling place voters who have gone to Lowell School since 1995 to vote at Lowell School, and they have moved. This has never impacted them because they don't vote in the other elections other than the federal polling place elections. So there is a percentage of voters that we could reach out to whom are steady polling place voters, and we could encourage them, if we have all mail for November, to help get their address updated and help them successfully vote, get their signature updated, get their address updated, and make sure that they understand the process clearly. So a couple of statistics about late registration. We had 4 days of late registration compared to 29 days of late registration. But we did serve quite a few voters. We served 150 voters in those 4 days. In the 29 days in 2016, we served
Did you freeze up?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry about that. Did you lose
All
my
right.
screen?
You cut out like when you were talking about how many people you processed during late registration.
Perfect. Yep. So 152 to 368. Here's what that means to me. That means to me that more people were receiving services via the mail and via the email and did not need to come in person. That is a big success. The other aspect is we served 469 voters on election day, and in 2016, we served 622 voters. Our average wait time on election day, we'll round it out to a minute. There was not a lot of wait time. We had 10 minutes as our longest in the middle of the day. So it was incredibly successful on our flow through those areas. Now, the breakdown really quickly on party ballots, 61% Democrat, very much in line. 171 total Green Party ballots, 30 total Libertarian Party ballots, as well as 17,114 Republican Party ballots. These match my other ones. Would you grab that from my office? Thanks. Okay. What went well and what didn't? We did a good job of getting in touch with voters to let them know that, hey, we have had a lot of changes. We were on the news media, we were on the papers, we did a lot of outreach, and that went pretty well. You'll also see that included in the areas that could be improved upon in the future. Our late registration staffing and flow went fantastic. I think some of that is directly related to the outreach that we had done around late registration. There was not a single time that I discussed late registration that I did not tell people, do not wait. We do not know what our lines will be like on election day. Our fairgrounds ballot drop location was incredibly successful, receiving over 4,500 ballots on election day. However, you'll also see that's something that could be improved upon. Our cleaning procedures, crowd control, and social distancing were excellent. At that point in time, we did not have a mandate for masks in public, but we did set up very good protocols to keep 6-foot distance, to clean between voters. Single-use pens voters were able to keep, and the flow went really well. I loved Stacy's quote that said, "I've never smelled so much Clorox in my life." Things that we could improve upon. This is a short list. My list that's next to me over here includes a lot more. We need to work on our flow. We've never had such a large all-male election, and some of this flow revolves around how do we prepare our ballots for tabulation. We utilized a lot of new areas, but we need to ramp up our staffing to meet the demands for an all-male election. So we need additional prep work. We have a whole day that we can utilize that will really help, and we need to limit our staff to split shifts. So that way they're not working a 12, 14, 18, or 24 plus hour day. One thing that I will say continually is that our job as elections are to run fair and accurate elections, and it is hard to have accuracy when we work those additional hours. Extended hours and additional drop locations. We did not know what to expect due to the pandemic. Information was changing on a daily basis, and I feel like we have a lot better information right now. We did not offer any extended hours or additional drop locations to voters for the primary election. This was specific because we were cautious that we would have a drive-through drop location on the Thursday before the election and lose critical judges for election day. As we now know what transmits COVID-19 a lot better than we did at that point in time, that is something we will definitely be hitting hard for the November election. Additional staff drop locations if it's an all-male election, extended hours including Saturday hours, as well as satellite offices. Our ballot printing had a major error. It was something we were able to accommodate and correct, but we had skewed ballots through our ballot printing. There is a clear process in Montana code to correct any ballots that are not machine readable. We noticed this 2 weeks before the election and ramped up hard. We made sure that this did not impact any voters, any candidates, or the reporting of results on election night. But this was an issue that we have worked directly with our vendor to help prevent in the future. They did compensate us and pay us for additional staff hours. We needed to hire in 5 additional teams, 15 people, and add them to the counting center. This meant additional materials for them, additional staff hours, and additional tables we needed to rent to fit everybody in the space. We've already met and coordinated with our vendor to help prevent this in the future and set up a quality assurance program to ensure that this does not impact us again. At the drive-through drop-off at the fairgrounds at about 4:30, the line blocked traffic on Russell Street. So it went out off to South and went all the way out to Malfunction Junction and blocked the light there. On the fly, we added in 2 lines. We pulled in 6 judges and made multiple drop-off locations to help expedite that process through. We got them off of the streets. If we go all mail for November, I've today sent the email to Emily saying we need to discuss how we have drive-through with a longer run-up so that we can get people off of the public streets to help make sure that we have a good area for them. Another big area is outreach. We got kind of beat up on Facebook about not being closed for democracy on Sunday. Every elections office across the state was closed that Sunday, but there was a big confusion because BIPA had prohibited after-hours ballot drop boxes. There was an injunction on BIPA, but a mail ballot election requires these drop boxes to be staffed. We need to be ahead of these sort of things. It's hard to be ahead of what you're not aware of. We're now well aware of it. And so we're already preparing to help make sure that we have clear outreach about where we will do drop-offs. We've reached out to schools to see whether they will have the availability for us to have a lobby so that we can do a drop location at those schools, or whether and have ADA voting equipment. This is a big area that we were discussing with Disability Rights Summit. Travis, we brought this up independently, is that since they were all outside, we did not have any ADA voting equipment because we couldn't guarantee that it would be at the right height. We couldn't guarantee that it would have the power. We couldn't guarantee that there were items that would open us up to another lawsuit on not having our ADA open. Now we're working well ahead of that to say, will there be a lobby where we can have a drive-through drop-off, but inside our lobby have the availability for somebody to utilize our ADA equipment? And the last area is we really want to work hard to update our ballot tracking. And what I mean by that is we're flushing out processes that are very common sense to me that we need to improve, that say, these are our ballots that we have sent out to our vendors. These are our ballots we have received back, and that there is a clear accounting. One of the issues that caught us was our vendor did not notify us that they had printed overage. As we were going through our audit, we had many extra ballots, and we had concerns that we had incorrectly stuffed our ballots for mailing. So we had to re-review that. So we have created a quality assurance and ballot tracking to help prevent those issues. Now, other areas that I have included multiple areas about drive-through, BIPA, current injunctions, how we do our ballot prep, how we track our ballots within the office, including additional numbering to make it easier for our workers to sort these ballots. And if there was one really big issue that I wanted to flag, it was planning and coordinating our split shift areas, from our counting center to our ballot processing to other areas. It is paramount that we have accurate election results, and we're going to work very hard on making sure that we get our results as accurate and as timely as possible, and accuracy is paramount. So we have calibrated from that last election, and we've said in order to get our results out, we'll need our additional shifts, we will need this, but we need to know that at midnight, if we need to, we will close our office and resume the next morning so that we can be fresh and make sure that it is accurate. Really quickly, we talked about this beforehand. Any other questions and comments for this area? All right, hearing none, being mindful of your time, I want to talk about some of our other processes. Our petition processing deadline is coming up at the end of the week. We have completed all of ours ahead of the deadline. We processed almost 35,000 signatures within this office for Initiative 187, 190, and Constitutional Amendment 118. These are completed and sent to the Secretary of State's office on the 13th. We did get notified last week and are working closely with the different contacts for the initiatives. They have been extended their deadline to correct them. So we reached out and coordinated with the Secretary of State, sent any correctable errors directly to them as well as to the state to help expedite that process. By Friday, we will be fully completed on our petitions, but hats off to our staff. There is a lot of pre-prep, processing signatures, reviewing, scanning, and sending over, and we did a great job in 3 weeks. We just finished inactivating voters with an undeliverable mail ballot notice. We received over 3,000 notices of undeliverable mail ballots. So the way that this process by law goes is that we shall inactivate voters who have an undeliverable mail ballot notice. Ballots are not forwardable. If a ballot is returned as undeliverable, we send out a notice that is forwarding service requested, notifying voters that they can pick up their ballot or request a replacement. If that notice is returned undeliverable, by law, we must inactivate those voters. We had a long discussion with the Secretary of State and with our legal representation. We decided that this is not an option. In general, you do not, as election administrators, change your voter list or do any maintenance between the primary and the general, but the law did not allow for that option. So we have wrapped that up earlier this week. Third-party voter registration cards. we're getting in 30 to 80 by mail, averaging about 50 a day of these voter registration cards. I wanted to let you know because they say somebody at this address may not be registered to vote, and they're pre-filled with some information, specifically the address. We've been receiving a lot of calls. We've been encouraging people to review myvoterpagemt.com to check their voter registration status. These mailers are an issue we have every federal election cycle, and while they are beneficial, we are currently processing through these and working to see how many are going to be duplicates, how many are going to be valid, and encouraging voters that if they are uncertain of their voter status to please fill out this form. So,
Bradley, if that's
yes.
something that a media release might be helpful. Sorry, I hear going, but if we can help with that, we can.
Yeah, let me get in touch with you offline here, but I think
Yep.
just a quick, hey, these are out in the mail. These started receiving in our office on Monday, correct?
That sounds right.
Yep.
Could be quite
So it's pretty timely. And I think a quick media release that just explains this and says, if you have questions, check here or call our office is fantastic. Staffing. We are going to post a testing and counting center coordination position very shortly. We created this to have additional help with the testing requirements and to assist with the transition of leadership in our office. As we are getting new ADA equipment, it will have additional testing requirements. And the reality is that with me being new to my role, Nathan starting on the 1st of June for his role, we needed this additional assistance. We did a temporary hire and we'll be posting that very shortly to call in to get a testing and counting center coordinator. I want to make sure that you guys are aware of all of these positions. So I've included these job descriptions, and when they are posted, we will make sure to reach out to you to say how important it is that we get good people into these roles to serve voters on election day. Here's the big unknown. Where are we at for November? Currently, I am planning on a polling place election. That is where we are slated. There has been a lot of discussion and talk that the governor may pass an executive order to call this to be an all-male election. But until that happens, I need to be working forward for our current plan. MCAT recorded our training sessions in March before we closed. So we're going to use a combination of those training sessions as well as weekly online meetings to train election judges. We're looking at scheduling training for September to October and planning on this limited schedule. Hopefully we'll have a decision before this so we do not put forward too much effort and recruit additional judges. It is hard to have judges train and then not have them serve, because when I call on them in 2020, they'll say, you really need me just like you did in 2020, right? And so we want to make sure that we are recruiting and training people who we will utilize. So we're looking at some small in-person or online classes for very specific areas. I will need to call in socially distanced in-person classes to go through new equipment. Any place that has equipment must have somebody trained on this equipment so that they can help assist voters for either casting a ballot in a polling place election, or if we have drop-off locations, specifically our new ADA equipment. Working specifically with our managers on a couple of areas, we'll need to have a few in-person meetings or an online class for our managers, and then closing calculations. If we have a 2-page ballot, our closing calculations become a lot more complex on election night, so we need to make sure that we have an opportunity to train those judges who would complete those calculations for us in how to do that. So it would require an executive order from the governor under emergency powers or an action of both the SOS and the legislature to hold a mail ballot election. Unfortunately, this is a political issue as well as an election and a personal health and safety issue. The rumor mill right now has stated that the decision will not be made until late August. That is hard for our prep work and planning. Throughout this week, we have worked hard with the Association of Clerk and Recorders, the Association of Counties, as well as recently working with, we had a call with Mayor Ingen and he had said that he wants to reach out to his association. So we're presenting them a lot of the information that I want to wrap up this conversation with you about. We're looking at all of our options. We're taking our concerns from the primary and potential infection. Consolidating polling places based off of staffing is the opposite of city-county health guidelines recommendations. However, we need staff to serve voters, we need places to serve voters, and we may have to consolidate our polling locations if it goes to be a polling place election. We've reached out currently to school districts to see what their availability is. We've got some great working partnerships with our school districts in other areas so that we can help make sure that we are working closely on that. ADA voting equipment. Express votes are the replacement from ES&S to the AutoMark. They will be delivered on the 21st of August. We will be additional mandatory training for any judges who will utilize this equipment, and it's going to coincide with our equipment maintenance for the November election. This is the only vendor that we have as an option in the state of Montana, so to upgrade our aging ADA equipment, this was our selection. These require additional testing because of the way that they process ballots. They have an activation card, and you can see it here in the lower corner. It comes as a blank piece of paper, and it is inserted into that machine, and then the precinct is selected and it prints out all of the races for that precinct and the selections. Our ballots that come from an ADA voting equipment currently cannot be read by our tabulating machines in our polling places. And if we have a polling place election in November, we will be manually transcribing these ballots after the polling places have closed to run them through our voting equipment. Travis, as we get closer to this, we're going to be trained on this on the 21st. Probably around the 24th or the 25th, I want to come together to you with what I've presented for the training and say, how can we improve upon this? And we're going to work closely with you as our EAC ADA representative, disability rights, and other organizations across the state. These have rolled out in other counties, so we're following some of their guidance and best practices, and we have the ability to avoid some of the pitfalls that they fell into as well. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but ballots were skewed and did not align with the required parameters from ES&S. We discovered this during the pre-test, and we were able to staff up, but one of the big issues with this is that we need to prevent this in the future. It had been the first time that we have ever experienced this. We did not have the quality assurances that we need to make sure that we can prevent this. We have them now. We've been very lucky in the past to not have this issue, but now we have the processes in place to prevent it. HAVA grant. We were awarded for 2020 $134,000 for HAVA money. We spent $26,000 on upgrading some of our equipment. We needed to upgrade the switch cabinet and install additional cameras for our ballot processing in the main building here. With our post-election audit, we did purchase additional boxes. We always have to purchase boxes for the election to store and track these ballots afterwards. It seems like an unfortunate expense, but we were fortunate to be able to use our HAVA grant for that. And then we purchased stanchions or crowd control posts for the remainder of that $1,000. This was incredibly helpful for COVID-19 spacing and other areas, and will be helpful as we get our building up to our final designations to have our TSA style weaving line to help track voters through the process. For our additional remaining $110,000, we need to update our receipting and late registration computer and materials. That is a critical area, but that will not utilize all $110,000. We have a request to the commissioners to pay for the maintenance and monitoring of a security system, but we could use this HAVA grant to install a security system and pay for the upfront costs on this. The final areas are that we could look towards something like a reader board to help share information on elections for anybody driving by. The other option, it could be something like a insertion machine. An insertion machine puts envelopes and instruction sheets into mailing envelopes. This is an area where we spend multiple thousands of dollars on preparing ballots to go out, and this could help improve this. And this could be a cost savings area for the county in general. Many departments do manual folding and insertion of mailings to go out or pay an outside vendor. These are options that we are looking at, but I wanted to let you know that this is out there, and if you hear of a great idea for a voting possibility, now is the time to bring it up, because we have the ability to use this HAVA grant to help increase our effectiveness in this office. I'm jumping backwards because I don't think I hit my prepaid postage discussion from much earlier.
Bradley, do you still have Josh with us?
Forgive me, I've been in my...
I am here.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, I saw that, and that's exactly why I jumped back. As we're at 4:30, I wanted to make sure we caught this. So let me get that pulled up and discuss where we're at for prepaid postage. And my apologies, guys, I just started going through these. So, prepaid postage. Denver and Todd sat in on the meeting where we presented this to the Board of County Commissioners as an official budget request on the 11th of June. We have received preliminary artwork for the envelopes from the vendor, and I have this. We need to have 2 separate envelopes. A business reply mail is based off of the size of the envelope and the weight of the contents inside of that envelope. If it is a 2-page ballot, it is a 2-ounce envelope. If it's a 1-page ballot, it's a 1-ounce envelope. So we have prepared this, and we have gotten these together. In order to get them approved by the USPS, we must submit to them 10 samples of each envelope to ensure that they meet their guidelines. Our vendor's minimum order is 5,000 envelopes. So we're at a pause. We have discussed cost sharing with MCPS School District 1 and with the City of Missoula. I'm still waiting for a reply back from Marty with the City of Missoula, but I had a discussion with Pat because I knew that this would be a critical area for today for our meeting. Pat's discussion, I took some bullet points down here, and he had said, it is hard because there is not a lot of data on how much this will increase turnout. We discussed this and we said, Pat, this is not so much a return on investment, this is a values issue. This is an area where we are looking at presenting this to the Board of County Commissioners budget request, and we want to know if you would help support us with cost sharing on this. Pat went on to state that they plan to run their elections through the Missoula County Elections Office. He said he appreciates the service that we provide, and he thinks that it is worth it for them to continue to contract with us regardless of whether we have prepaid postage or not, and that they would find a way to support us financially. Their budget has been in the same process of our budget, and it did not include this. They would prefer that it did not hit them for the spring, but they had said that if this is the direction that the county moves forward in, they will continue to contract with the elections office. They said that this is a county decision that should be made, and it is known that they will find a way to support us financially if we decide to push forward with that. The final budget is still in the process of being prepared at the county level. So they're getting the data, getting all of the numbers they need to know all of the different areas of what are our total requests, what are our total expenditures and revenues. This is currently scheduled to be together by the end of July, and the current budget process schedules adoption at the end of August. As I just stated, I need to present 10 samples of each of these envelopes to the USPS for a 4 to 8 week validation process. End of August pushes it very late to get these prepped to have them available, especially if they need to go back for a second review. So we may be presenting a request for commissioner action to expedite this process, specifically around prepaid postage, to know that we can have an answer to this question and prepare to move forward on preparing these envelopes, either prepaid postage or not. Now, the governor's request may come forward for November and state that part of this is that counties have the option to sign in all mail. If they sign in all mail, in the primary, they had us prepay postage. The likelihood they have us do this in November is very high. Qualified business reply mail would save taxpayers $10,000 in the primary. We did not have time to submit qualified business reply mail. 19,000 ballots were out there that never got returned to us as undeliverable, that never got returned by voters. They all had 50 cents postage on them. That's where we come up with $10,000 of taxpayer savings. Now, yes, we're reimbursed through the CARES Act, but CARES Act funding comes from tax dollars from a different pool. So this is an opportunity for us to prepare for November either way to help save. So these requests have been presented. They are moving forward, and there may be a request for commissioner action over the next couple of weeks, which says we don't have the luxury of waiting till the end of August to have this decision made. And this is the opportunity to update you, Josh, as to where we're at on all of this, to update the election advisory committee, and to note that we have worked hard on a lot of different issues. For me, some of the big areas are continuity. It directly aligns with our mission statement to provide the best services we can in the most cost-effective way. We had prepaid postage for the primary. Having it for November, whether or not the governor calls for it, will be a little bit of continuity in a very uncertain time. And specifically that this request is a budget enhancement for this year, but an ongoing request, so that Missoula County says that these are permanent. We have been the first county in the state to prepay postage for all elections.
So Bradley,
yeah,
that's great. I would just say, as soon as you feel like you know where this is headed, let us know, even if that isn't the moment for the request for commissioner action. If it's a discussion item and an admin and you're going to bring it the next week, as soon as you feel like this is what's going to have to happen, let us know. And you know, I don't be speaking out of turn for my other two BCC members, but I don't anticipate any conflict around this. I think everyone is on the same page in terms of values and understands the moment that we're in. So I don't think you should be concerned about it. But the more advanced notice, the better, so people can comment and speak their minds, and people will know. But I wouldn't stress. Just keep doing what you're doing, and let us know as soon as you know. As we were talking, I got an email from Connie Keogh, who had just heard from Rafe Graybill about the governor's taking action on this, on the all mail-in. And I wanted to read that to you.
Yes, please.
I can find it.
Yeah, a lot of this information has been happening rapidly. I've been working to prepare letters that were slated to be going through to the Association of Clerk and Recorders for Friday. This got bumped up to Thursday. We're currently working at the request from the Board of County Commissioners to work with our communications department to draft a letter from the commissioners. There's a lot pushing forward on the update for all mail election, and it's happening very rapidly.
Yeah, I found it. I can read this real quick. So Connie, we met with our legislative delegation for the state this afternoon, and Dave asked them to gather some info on the governor's decision on elections. And here's what the response was to Connie as of just like an hour ago. She reached out to Rafe Graybill. In quotes now, Rafe assured me that the election is 100% on the governor's mind, and he is well aware of deadlines and the urgency to make a decision soon. He said he was hoping for a decision in early August. I reminded him of the August 10 date Dave mentioned. They have been working with clerk and recorders and other groups across the state to compile a report on the issues with the primary and considerations for the general election. They are paying particular attention to tribal access and thinking about ways to establish 30 days of early voting to improve access and opportunities as well to assure safety, etc. I shared with him the concerns about elderly volunteers to work the election as well as with access to facilities. Then she goes on to say we need to make sure we're in good contact with MACO.
Yep. And that's exactly it. Mako, Chantel, has been working with election administrators across the state. We provided forward, specifically the areas that I have provided forward have been outreach, planning, coordination, catching some of these areas so that we can have our instructions set correctly to tell people where to go now and not have changes midway through. That was a big hit, is that the instructions and changes had been made and they needed to get updated for many counties. We are also working hard on university issues. Casey Hayes, the election administrator in Gallatin County, and I have been really focused on undeliverable ballots, how we can help increase this, increase ballots being delivered, how we can eliminate undeliverable ballots, and then ADA access and providing additional ADA access. As Travis brought up earlier, one of the big hits is that ADA community members who need to utilize that equipment did not have the best access to it because of on-the-fly changes, and working to make sure that we can have satellite offices with ADA equipment and drop-off locations with this ADA equipment, and not necessarily just election day. So that's good. We're all pushing forward. My concern is that is August 10th would be 85 days before the election. 85 days before the election is standard planning. The sooner the better, because then we can put our efforts, instead of election judge recruitment and training, into educating voters on mail ballot and coordinating our polling locations, drop-off locations, and other areas. So that is great to hear, and I like seeing that continuity message across the board.
So I think one of the questions that I have in my mind that I think will be important to answer for our prepaid postage discussion is, if Missoula County were to go ahead and make this commitment and approve the budget request that we put forward, and the governor issues an order calling for all mail ballot elections and postage to be paid, would Missoula County be reimbursed for that cost?
In the primary election, other counties had, Gallatin County has a prepaid postage envelope, and they were reimbursed for the returned rate. So through the CARES Act, we can be reimbursed for the returned rate of qualified business mail. That would not be an issue, and that would be an additional cost savings through the CARES Act reimbursement. And as we kind of stated, if that is the call, we can save taxpayers by going qualified business reply mail versus metered postage.
So Bradley, I would just say when you feel like you need to start bringing this up with us, make sure you reiterate that message as well.
You bet. And
that'll be important for media and for the general public.
I work closely with Ann and Chris on many of the BCC issues, because that's an area where I always need a little support. We were going to bring bylaws together very, very shortly for you. Maybe we can add in bylaws as an action item and then a discussion item at very similar timing.
Perfect. Bradley, that sounds like good strategy.
Great. Other questions on prepaid postage? Great. Let me catch us back up to where we were.
Okay, then, Bradley, with that, I'm gonna have to jump off, but I really appreciate all your effort. You've doing a fantastic job in a super trying year, and I'm really excited that you're part of it.
I appreciate it very much. We don't have too much to go over, and this will be recorded if you want to catch up later. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
This was just some fun info. UMT Big Sky Poll. They did a survey of voting preferences. It came out in June. We utilized their services. This is Sarah Remford, the Masters of Public Administration program from the University of Montana, as well as their communications department. I am planning on running a survey of elections in Missoula County and outreach, possibly in December of 2020. Sarah and I actually have a meeting tomorrow to go through what these costs are, how we can get it, and how I can help cover it. These include things like, do you support all mail? Do we provide enough services? How could we improve? How close do you want your polling places? Other issues like that. Some of these results were just a quick update. They surveyed 517 Montanans. And 30% said they have a lot of trust that elections are fair. That's not a very high number. 53% said they strongly agree that their vote matters. But the big issue down here is that if the state of Montana moved to a mail-in vote system with no physical polling places, 41% of people said they'd be more likely to vote. Here's what I like about this. These weren't specific areas that election administrators reached out for. This is a scientifically conducted survey. It's got standard deviation, and you can see the full report of our standard deviation and answers through here. This is the data that I want our elections office making decisions on in the future. And so I just thought it was good to bring this to everybody on the EAC's attention.
I'm really glad that you're looking at partnering with Sarah to do another scientifically valid survey. One thing that I would really like to see included is speaking with people who did not vote in the last election. I'd like to know why they didn't vote. What are the reasons? What are the barriers that people still have? Because that points us in an informed discussion about ways that we can make improvements.
Absolutely. And as we present this, we will have ample time to help prepare together our questions for this. And the EAC will be a big part of this. This is where we can make sure that we're covering all of these different issues and outreach. That is the hardest thing for me. What is the best way to do outreach? How do I get this message out to everybody so that we don't get that Facebook post that says you don't care about voters?
Right.
And it is hard. And so this is a good opportunity to get that information directly from the end consumers.
Bradley, I'm glad that you're moving forward and meeting with Sarah tomorrow and moving quickly on this. What does your timeline look like for conducting this poll and being able to get results back?
I don't know. That's what our meeting really is. It is very exploring the situation. This was all taken on in 2015 before I was hired in 2016.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly it. Sarah, I'm interested. How much time do we need? How much lead up? I'd like it to be close to the election so it's vivid in people's mind. But I also want to make sure that we have time, we prepare, and we know what this process looks like.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I think the EAC would be very interested in having a broader discussion about this when we have all of our committee members present. I'm going to be doing some outreach after this to find out why folks weren't able to attend and didn't get back to us, by the way. I just want you to know that. But I love the opportunity for our committee to discuss this fully and be able to give some feedback and some advice.
Yeah, and I mean, these are the aspects where the Elections Advisory Committee can advise us on elections. That is a great question. What are the barriers, you know? Quickly, I want to talk about National Voter Registration Day. As I'm just trying to be mindful of time, I will get us done by 5 o'clock, so I'll pick it up a little bit. I don't utilize National Voter Registration Day to register voters. We are flush with third-party groups that register voters in Missoula County. I think that this will be a good educational event, and the specific areas that I would like to discuss are security of all mail ballot elections, how we handle mail-in ballots and discuss the security. This is very, very similar to what we did in 2016 or 17 for National Voter Registration Day. We wanted to reach out to the public and let them know about elections issues that are important and pertinent currently. The issue is this is the same day as the resolution for the low school bond election. We won't be doing an in-person meeting. I can schedule a Teams meeting. The low school bond election is a lot smaller election. Total, it consists of 4,800 voters. We would not be mailing that many ballots, and this would be a very small count. They passed a resolution on the 9th. We've been working with them directly to prepare their mail ballot plan, but it called for an election on the 22nd. Very limited additional staffing. It does overlap with election judge training and National Voter Registration Day. Our plan is currently to have all of our trainings, meetings, and educational events online. So we can be in multiple places at the same time with that. Election judge training and equipment. We've talked about our new equipment coming in and changing. Our final day for any additions to the ballot is the 10th, 85 days before the election. We need to finalize any consolidated polling places for this election. Montana Code Annotated states 30 days before the election. We're hoping to have guidance from the governor well ahead of time. Drop locations do not count as consolidated polling locations. They do not require that commissioner action. So that is a big benefit. We'll need to certify our ballots. We are working closely to help with our ballot certification and ballot proofing. We have already entered our candidates from Missoula County in to help expedite this process. This was an area where we had gotten hit the school election. Our office made a mistake on ballot proofing, and we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be ahead of the curve. Ballot printing we're running through. Our UACAVA mail date would be 45 days before, and these are the rest of the processes we do with this election. This is my last slide in here. So I want to take the last 10 minutes and 8 minutes at this point in time and just discuss a little bit all mail election. We've got a couple of things that we need to hit, and one of the big outreach areas, we in this with the Election Advisory Committee asking me, how can we help? I've prepared together a list of talking points, and I'm working with Allison, our communications department, today. I'm preparing those into a letter, both from the EAC perspective as well as from the Board of County Commissioners perspective. I think that we can present this via email. We can reach out to all of the different committees and say, these are the talking points. This is the letter that was drafted. Make this personal to the EAC, and can we submit an op-ed or a letter to the governor requesting that this decision is made promptly. I am working hard on this process. I'm working hard on a lot of things simultaneously. And so this is all being prepared right now. It should be available by the end of the week at the absolute latest. So that's my big aspect right now. The issue is the sooner we know, the more I can work with my polling place voters, and I can do an address update. I have options that I can do to help work towards making sure voters have a more successful election day if I can plan towards that now. Where the governor says that he understands the importance of this, that is not the governor saying I will pass a mail ballot executive order on this date. I'm still in that unknown category. So our biggest issue is that grand unknown. Will we be by mail or a polling place election? And that is our office's main focus right now. Reaching out to election judges. Right now I've got 80% of my surveyed election judges said that they would work under the current COVID conditions. 70% said that they would work under a lockdown. 88% said that they would help enforce social distancing and mask wearing protocols. So we're getting this information now to help know how much staffing do we need, where are we at. It is a hard decision as an election administrator to ask people to put their health and safety on the line to run the election. We are fortunate. 80% of the people we asked said, yes, we will do it. They support elections. I'm cautious, very personally cautious that somebody will be ill from the election because we asked them to work.
Yeah, and that is in addition to the general threat to the public health. Like in addition to protecting our election judges, if you provide an opportunity where you have a dozen different in-person polling locations, those are opportunities for community spread. We don't need that. We don't want that.
Mm-hmm. But if we plan now and know where we're at now, that's the difference.
Right.
Consolidate those polling places. A dozen is better than one. You know, it's about that interaction, that time, and that varied group coming in. Yep. Now, more than we had for the primary, but cautious and working closely with our city county health department and confirming that our plans are in the best mind of health and safety. So we do have a couple of other issues that we should hit about scheduling our next meeting in other areas. I will do a follow-up email to this to everybody on the committee, including this full presentation and discussion, a link to this, as well as talking points in a letter and discussing that. And from there, Denver, Travis, a few of you who are on this call, if you can help kind of say that, yes, this is important, we put our spin on this now and get this out. We're working to see the best area. The governor really doesn't need letters from 56 counties, 5,000 cities, election advisory committees in other areas. but this might be a good opportunity for an op-ed to let the public know that we're concerned about elections right now, and this is what we're looking at. That's my quick update. A lot of information for you guys. I hope it's helpful. I think that this is where I want the elections department to be directly after an election. Lots of information, lots of good guidance for you guys. Don't hesitate to let me know what more you want to see, because I'm learning too.
Yeah. Bradley, I greatly appreciate that, and thank you for taking the time to put all of this together. This is a really substantive and a comprehensive update. As far as making sense of the numbers, what I always find to be helpful and interesting is not just reviewing the numbers in this year, but looking at that compared to the last comparable election year, and looking at over a 5 or 10 year spread. So you can actually see the change in numbers if there is a change. I know it's a lot more work, and I don't want to ask you to put another thing on your plate. But as far as being able to make sense of the numbers, being able to use them in an effective way, that is what is most helpful for me.
Absolutely, and that's been a little bit of a gap. You'll notice I referenced 2016 numbers because that was the last similar election.
Oh.
However, I've been working with other election administrators, and we've found like our late registration numbers, our turnout numbers, our absentee numbers. And we're working to compile these for all elections so that when you ask for this, I say, no, it's not a big push. I actually have it right here. And all I'm doing is adding in this election's numbers. So these are areas we're proceeding towards, and that'll be easy to hit. And don't hesitate for everybody else to reach out offline. Send me an email. I want to provide the best info I can for all of you.
I appreciate that. I want to go back to this idea of putting out an op-ed. So as I have said many times before, I am happy to help in whatever way I can. If that is drafting or simply submitting an op-ed, I am more than happy to do that. One thing that does strike me is that where Karen Wickersham was joining us at the very beginning of this meeting, and Von Dean has been a strong advocate, as you have said, for mail ballot elections. We may have an opportunity to demonstrate bipartisan support on this issue that may resonate more with the governor or with the community, rather than myself as chair. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of where my thinking goes.
Yes, and I've had that discussion both with Von Dean and Karen, separate from the EAC, because they both support mail ballot. They've both been vocal about it, and there are areas where they both agree. And I think that maybe separate from this overall, but a discussion that says we're in this together. Look at us, opposite sides of the fence, hand in hand, supporting the same issue, because we're all in this together. And so I think that's a great area, Denver, and I'll follow up on that tomorrow.
Okay, so we can potentially do that in addition to an op-ed on behalf of the EAC.
And I think that would be the best way to go forward. An op-ed from the EAC. We got Allison working to just help me turn bullet points into something a little bit more readable.
Yep.
And then we'll give it to you guys similar to how we have in the past. And then I'll reach out separately for a letter to the editor from Karen and from Von Dean. So that way we can discuss similar but different issues and really highlight collaboration.
That's great. As far as the letter from the EAC, Travis, you and I are the only ones still on this call from the committee. I'd love to work with you on this. Would you be willing to lend your name and to work with me on drafting an op-ed?
Yep.
Great. And I'm assuming that we would want to put that into not only Missoula papers, but other papers across the state. What are your thoughts on that, Bradley?
I think Lee papers. I think specifically the Pathfinder and the Missoulian, obviously, but I think you could hit this for all Lee papers. You know what I mean? There is a caution. We are a unique environment in the state, and sometimes I will not participate in legislative discussions because I am from Missoula.
Yep.
Sometimes a letter to the editor around the other part of the states from the Election Advisory Committee in Missoula County may not be seen with the same gravitas as it is here.
That's fair.
Just as a note, I
Yep.
don't think it would be detrimental, but it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, I fully recognize that. To my knowledge, the EAC in Missoula County is the only committee of its kind in the state. That was my previous understanding. Is that still true? Because that does give us a little bit of a different level of uniqueness or influence.
It does. And still note, it is Missoula County. And when you go to Ravalli, they've got a great viewpoint of us here,
Sure. But
but
if the purpose is to get the governor's attention specifically, not necessarily to influence public opinion in those communities, but to get our message in front of the governor as often as possible, I think it could be helpful.
Exactly. It is to say that it is important we have a decision soon so that we can plan and prep. And if that decision is polling place, well, we still have 2 plans. If that decision is mail ballot, at least we have 1 plan.
Yep. Great.
Next meeting. I love this. We're down to you, me, and Travis.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. I would like to schedule a short meeting for next month. 30 minutes, prepaid postage. That's it. I think something like this, just to say, here's where we decided on prepaid postage. We'll obviously keep you involved in this process as it goes forward, but that can be a quick update. I want to do a lot of outreach via email to the EAC so that you guys are aware of a lot of these areas as they go forward.
Yep.
I think we should have an in person, a full-fledged meeting September.
Okay. So I think that makes a lot of sense. If we are in a situation where we have more than a month between meetings with the EAC, I would like for me, you, and Travis to at least touch base for a half hour on a monthly basis, just so that we can stay informed on what's happening and be able to provide that connection to the larger committee. I don't think it's necessary that the entire committee meet every month, and I don't think it's necessary that we have a 1 or 2 hour meeting every time. But I think that we need to have a more frequent, I'd like to see more frequent communication.
So I love that idea because one of the hard parts is that I'm presenting all of this information to everybody at different times. This does not need to be an EAC meeting. This can be a phone call or a Teams meeting for you, me, and Travis for 30 minutes to say, here's where we're at on these issues.
Yeah.
To me, I now want to say, no, I don't want to have a meeting next month. I want to have the September meeting, and I want us to have a call. And I don't even want to schedule it in September. I think it would make more sense to do it quickly around our request for commissioner action so that you guys are knowledgeable about what's happening with that. So I'll be discussing with Ann tomorrow where we put our bylaws and where we put our discussion item for this. And as soon as I get that information, I'll email you guys, and the day before we should have a call.
Okay.
That way we can keep this going forward, and then you can provide. I step on your toes a lot, Denver. My apologies. Because I'm like, we need to schedule the next meeting date. I like that you guys would reach out. That's a big area I've been trying to push, is that through the EAC, I can communicate with the chair and the vice chair, and you guys can reach out and communicate with the rest of the EAC.
Absolutely.
So I think that would be a really great area. September, same schedule. What is it, like second or third Tuesday at 3 p.m.? You want me to pull it up?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Sorry.
No worries. I've got on the second Tuesday of August. It's the 11th as it falls on the calendar.
Yeah, and that's where I think, can we bump it to September and not do a call with you guys for August, but have a full-fledged meeting on the 8th of September?
I think that sounds good. Travis, what's that look like for you?
Good.
Okay.
And then I think in September, we should plan in October. Very abridged because I know I'm going to be pulled 18 different directions.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the time where my goal for EAC is to advise, support, and echo our communications. And by golly, October is when I need it.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, keep in mind people in normal times and sometimes even still do travel in August. It is typically difficult to pull people together. So I think that makes sense. I think that'll be a good use of our time. And I like the idea of having more communication between at least the three of us. And I'm happy to be that bridge to the rest of the committee members.
Well, and I think that will show a leadership as the chair, encourage people to possibly opt to be the chair. I mean, right now it's like, do you want to run the meeting? Well, right now it can be, hey, would you like to get this information and help us coordinate? And that all of a sudden holds more appeal to me personally than just attending and answering some questions.
I agree. I think we want to empower committee members. I think
He froze.
Oop, lost him.
That's what happened to you earlier.
Yeah, I could tell right away. So at least I didn't continue 5 slides on. All right, Travis, what do you think? Send him a message and say we're scheduled. Thank you, Denver.
Yeah, what time, what day was that again?
So it would be September 8th at 3 p.m.
Okay.
And I'm shooting Denver a message right now. Travis, I appreciate everything that you do for us. I am excited to work on some of these other areas. That's the stuff I need to know. That parking spot in the middle out there sucks. Easy, gone. You know, I really appreciate all the help that you've given to our office recently.
No worries. Maybe before you do a big training on the new machines for everybody, maybe you and I can get together and mess around with one of them and kind of learn how it all works.
So right now, 23rd and 24th are my pre-training days. This is the days that we in our office get trained, and I would like you to attend. And
The
that will
23rd and
open
24th of July.
August.
What
That's
time?
a Monday and Tuesday. I'm actually going to invite everybody from the EAC.
You mean 24th, 25th?
Yeah. I'm sure I said 23rd and 24th in an email, but I definitely mean 24th and 25th. Yeah, that Monday and Tuesday, because we'll be getting equipment maintenance and our training for our internal staff. You might as well hear exactly how we get trained and see what we can improve upon and how we could do it better. And then you're not getting it secondhand. I mean, I don't think that you feel that I'm not giving you accurate information, but you're getting exactly what I'm getting when I'm getting it.
Right. Are you guys getting a new counting machine too, or the ones that we already have count those new ballots?
So that is a big discussion. Our 850s.
I mean, the big machine.
Yep, those ones can. In order to do that,
software.
I have to change my software. If I change my software, I have to upgrade my polling place equipment. And
that's not how they sold it at the thing.
No, it's not, is it? Because there have been some things that I have had some issues with ES&S. Now, the new software is good. The more I review it, the more I like it. These aren't changes I can make for November. My plan is hopefully to present a way that everybody's ballots are counted the same for the next polling place election we have.
Yeah, the certification thing at the Capitol, what they told me is that it would, with the software upgrade, it would be able to count both styles of ballots. They didn't say anything that you would have to upgrade the precinct counters.
Yeah, and the new software will count a polling place style ballot, but it's a different ballot than what we currently use. But the M100 will not function. Their other polling place tabulator will. Oh, I just lost Denver. He was on board for a while. And I'm just texting him September 8th at 3 p.m. And now here's the reality. This is why I want you to come to this training. If I'm off, then you're not getting good information. If I'm right, you're doing fine, but I don't know for sure that we're spot on. You know what I mean? Because what I got was more of the sales pitch, it felt. So I think that I'll plug you in on there. I will send out that email tomorrow with all of this, and I'll say, hey, Travis brought up a great point. This is our training. I'd like to invite you to come to our training.
Okay.
All right. Hey, Travis, thanks for everything.
Yep, thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.